Now. Yes?
It's not live. Namashreshtam manumapi sachiputram atriswarupam rupam tastikrajam urupurim maturim gostavatim radhakundam girivaram aho radikamadabasam prapto yasya pratita kripaya shri gurum tam natosmi. Jai Jai Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Reading from Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Lila, chapter 25. It's the final chapter of the Madhya Lila. And it is entitled, The Residents of Varanasi Become Vaishnavas. Jai Shri Gurudev Ki Jai. Thanks Prabhu, Hare Krishna. The residents of Varanasi become Vaishnavas. Including Varanasi's spiritual leadership, which was a Shankarite collection of sannyasis, many led by one Prakashananda Saraswati, who was at first, as we were recapping yesterday, inimical to Mahaprabhu, and then by Mahaprabhu's mercy and by the agency essentially by the agency of Mahaprabhu's mercy, but by the arrangement of one Maharashtrian Brahmin. He's known as the Maharashtrian Brahmin, living there in Varanasi. He brought them all together. And then on meeting Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in person and having a brief discussion, then Prakashananda is transformed from being an inimical criticizer of Mahaprabhu to being a devotee of Mahaprabhu, from being an impersonalist to being a bhakta, a devotionalist, if that is a word. And that has been described in the Adi Lila, which is not chronological, but again, as we were mentioning yesterday, some parts of the Chaitanya Charitamrita are not chronological due to the advanced age at which Krishnadas Kaviraj was at when he was writing it. Some say early 90s, 91, 92, very old. So naturally his physical health wasn't so good. And perhaps at times when he felt that he may be close to departure, he quickly wrote summaries of later parts of Mahaprabhu's life that he prioritized and just quickly put them down on paper, so that if he did pass away, they wouldn't be lost.
Only the latest parts of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's life, you say?
Later parts that he prioritized, deemed most important in terms of recording, so that they wouldn't be lost. So that at least if he did pass away before finishing the book as he wanted to finish it, as he wanted it to be done, presumably chronologically throughout Mahaprabhu's line, recording Mahaprabhu's life along a chronological timeline. But if he couldn't do that, if he passed away before then at least the important bits that he deemed most important would have been recorded for posterity, for the people that came later. You and me and everyone else. And so that's why we get bits that seem out of, that are not chronological, that seem out of place, such as the beginning chapters of Madhya Lila and as referred to here, chapter 7. I think it's chapter 7, isn't it? I think some chapter in Adi Lila where he's recording this pastime, which is at the tail end of Madhya Lila. So it's not chronological, but again, he recorded it in case he passed away, and at least it would be there. So it was put in there, and then there was no editing done at the end, which is one of the beauties. It's like one of the idiosyncrasies of Chaitanya Charitamrita. No one, after Kaviraj Goswami wrote it, no one came in and thought, oh, let's rearrange it so it's chronologically perfect. That wasn't done, which is good. So it's unique in that sense. So we are on text number 12, and Kaviraj Goswami is recapping briefly this conversion pastime and the prelude to it, which is Prakashananda's criticism, and which was heard, as we say here. Anyway, we'll read here. Text 10. Varanasi vasa amara haya sarvakale sarvakala dukkha bhava iha na karile. So the Maharashtrian Brahmin is saying, I shall have to live at Varanasi for the rest of my life. If I do not try to carry out this plan, I shall certainly continue to suffer dukkha bhava, unhappiness. So Mahaprabhu has been criticized. He's heard it. The criticism has kind of percolated around Varanasi's community. And the Maharashtrian Brahmin is saying, well, Mahaprabhu's name has been publicly stained, and the gossip or the slander has spread around the community. And I've got to live here for the rest of my life. I won't be able to tolerate this. So his plan is to organize a meeting where Mahaprabhu can, I was going to say redeem, it's not correct terminology, where Mahaprabhu's real position can be understood primarily by the Mayavad sannyasis, because the common people of Varanasi were already very attached and attracted to Mahaprabhu. They were naturally following Mahaprabhu around, doing kirtan. We hear that at the Bindu Madhava temple, wherever Mahaprabhu would go, crowds of people would follow him. And when he first meets Rupa Goswami at the Bindu Madhava temple, there's so many people there. The description is thousands and thousands of people. So Rupa Goswami and his brother Vallabha pay obeisances from a distance. So Mahaprabhu was actually already very popular.
Just ask you,
So,
how would so many people know about, like there's thousands of people at Goswami, so how would anybody know?
word spreads very fast.
Yeah.
Word spreads from person to person. You'll note that, even in today's society, with the advances of technology, generally people don't spend so much time with each other, face to face, right? But previous times, with no technology, even 10 years ago or 15 years ago, before smartphones, people spoke to each other more, right? So technology tends to limit face-to-face communication. But before then, there was a lot more verbal communication. Nowadays, if a great saint arrived, you see, there's several factors to be considered. That in a religious society, great saints and sannyasis are considered somewhat of a celebrity status. So, in a society that has an underbelly of religious culture, then someone who is a leader of religious or spiritual culture is a celebrity. So their arrival in town is a cause for news to spread. News spreads, and they gather around. They meet this person. And before the days of technology, it was verbal, mouth to mouth, person to person communication. So, particularly in India, if you've seen how word can spread in India, you will understand. And I'm saying particularly in India, and particularly before the days of communication, word would spread very fast. In an Indian village, word can spread like a wave through the village if there's some kind of incident. If there's a traffic incident in India, you'll be amazed how many people can congregate so quickly. How do they hear about it? Somehow they do. So word spreads, it ripples through very quickly. So particularly in a culture where, there's no... Today it would probably spread via social media, but back then it would spread person to person, spread very quickly. And people would gather and follow Mahaprabhu. It's the village life, I presume traditional village life in most countries was quite social, quite a vibrant social life where people would gather together. Particularly in India, with so much kind of outdoor communal, the outdoor and communal nature of their society.
And
people would gather.
And they would live very close to each other. It's very densified.
Yes, very dense, yeah.
Dense.
I mean, and word would travel ahead of Mahaprabhu. And this is a theme throughout much of the Madhya Lila, where crowds of people would follow Mahaprabhu around. So word was spreading along with Mahaprabhu's movements. His travel. Word was spreading ahead of him. So it was actually impossible for Mahaprabhu. It was very difficult for Mahaprabhu to travel alone. And that's why when he did go to Vrindavan from Jagannath Puri, eventually the second successful attempt, he travelled through the Jharkhand jungle, through the mountain jungle path, very remote, because there was no one there. If he travelled along the main route, which would have been easier travelling in terms of speed and efficiency, comforts, he would have been accompanied by throngs and thousands of people. And that was one of the reasons why he aborted his first mission to go to Vrindavan, at the suggestion of Sanatana Goswami. They were in Ramkali, which was the government seat of Bengal at the time. Thousands of people were there, and it was coming to the attention of the ruler. He thought there might be some political insurrection taking place. And then Sanatana Goswami, who was a politician, he was the prime minister for the king, second in command, pretty much, you could say. He advised Mahaprabhu. He said, it's not really safe. It's not advisable to be moving across the country with so many people in tow, thousands of people. And Mahaprabhu said, Mahaprabhu agreed. And this is correct. So he aborted his journey and went back to Puri, and a couple of years later he went again. This time without telling anyone. So there was the default setting for Mahaprabhu's travels was to be accompanied by thousands of people. That was normal. It was not normal for him to be traveling by himself or one or two companions. That's how popular Mahaprabhu was. And in this connection, Guru Maharaj talks about when Mahaprabhu is on his first journey to Vrindavan, before he meets Rupa and Sanatan, he comes and revisits the Navadvip area, and of course this is the Aparad Bhanjana pastime, where he goes to Koladweep, and the Ganges becomes full of people. The Chaitanya Bhagavat describes it. There were so many people around following Mahaprabhu that the house of Vidya Vachaspati was desecrated. The people climbing over the walls and through the gardens, and it was like what you'd expect at a rock concert, a big outdoor music festival or something. The whole area becomes trampled and flattened. That's what was happening. So many people that Vachaspati's house was not his house itself, but the gardens and the walls and the landscaping of his house was all desecrated, trampled. So Mahaprabhu had to move from there to the house of one devotee called Madhavananda in Kulia. He stayed at Kulia for 7 nights. And this is, of course, Aparad Bhanjan Pat on this pastime. It's based on this pastime. The Mula Mat, our central mat, is formed with on the location of this forgiveness, this grand amnesty of all aparad, that pastime of Mahaprabhu. Our mat is formed at that location very intentionally. So Guru Maharaj was saying that when he was reading this account in Chaitanya Bhagavat, where Vrindavan Das Thakur is describing a sea of heads in the Ganga, like bank to bank, there's people obviously swimming in the Ganga and perhaps on boats and other flotation devices, and just crowds, and on the either bank, thousands and thousands following Mahaprabhu. He thought, well, this is like Vrindavan Das Thakur is taking some poetic license. Perhaps he's exaggerating a little bit. It's not literally true. It's somewhat hyperbolic. This was his thinking. But then when he saw Gandhi, or read reports, I forget whether he saw him personally or read reports of photographs in the newspapers, of Gandhi being followed by thousands of people. Thousands, huge crowds, enormous numbers of people following Gandhi. He said, oh, now I understand. It's quite easily literally true. Indeed, it is literally true. So, it's not at all improbable to conceive of how Mahaprabhu is very popular and constantly swamped by thousands and thousands of people. The culture at the time permitted it, even the culture in India now. The way the social structure of the society there operates, it's easier for people to gather together and move around in public spaces together. Not that that's so important, but nonetheless, Mahaprabhu was followed by many, many people. And of course, to repeat, that's the reason why he left very quickly and surreptitiously. He told, this is what we said in the puppet show during the anniversary festival. He informs Swarup Damodar and I guess Ramananda Rai that he's going. I'm going to Vrindavan. So he only tells them, he doesn't tell anyone else, because then of course he'd be followed. Too much word would spread. He said, but I'm going by the jungle path. He wanted to go by himself, but they implored him to take one servant, Balabhadra Bhattacharya, with him. But he leaves surreptitiously and quickly, swiftly, goes straight into the jungle path. And it is a proper 550 years ago in India, a proper jungle path, Jharkhanda. If you look at the range of certain animals that have decreased now, it's full of tigers. Full of tigers and leopards and elephants. Yeah, and of course, we get, as a result of that, we get the amazing Jharkhanda pastimes where the animals are overcome with Mahaprabhu's Madhura. Essentially what happens is that the animals are saturated. They come into the proximity of Mahaprabhu and they are saturated with Mahaprabhu's Madhura Ras, which is love. So the tigers are licking the deer and the deer are licking the tigers. Because in Madhura Ras there's no violence, so the animals are transported out of their animal nature. Because inside of the animal is also the soul, the consciousness. So they're in touch. Not only is consciousness being touched, all of the coverings, the animalistic coverings, have been bypassed, and thus the the normal instincts of the animals, such as the tiger to eat the deer or deer to run away, they're all bypassed and overcome. Saturated with Mahaprabhu's Madhura Ras, spiritual love. And it says the deer are jumping around, and the tigers are moving around, and the elephants are dancing. Quite miraculous. All caught up in Mahaprabhu's spiritual energy of Madhura Ras, the sweet taste, sweet relationship.
And you say
So,
Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had to leave
Yeah.
Jaipur, yeah?
He didn't have to.
I mean,
He wanted to.
the place he left?
Yes.
Jaipur.
Yes, yes. So, the Maharashtrian Brahmin is considering and how he can rectify the situation of Mahaprabhu's good name being criticized by the sannyasis. So, although the popular people, they adore Mahaprabhu, still, if their spiritual leadership is criticizing Mahaprabhu, then his name is tainted. So the Maharashtrian Brahmin has come up with a plan to remedy that by getting them together in a meeting, having them come together and meet each other. At this time, Chandrasekhara and Tapan Mishra also both heard the blasphemous criticism against Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and they felt very unhappy. They came to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's lotus feet to submit a request. Bhakta dukkha deki prabhu meneti chintila sanyasira mana piraite mana haila. They submitted their request, and Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, seeing his devotees' unhappiness, decided to turn the minds of the Mayavadi sannyasis. So Mahaprabhu himself was not in didn't have any desire to, you could say, convert the sannyasis for his own ends. But in order to relieve the unhappiness of the devotees, he chose to do it. Hena kale vipra ashikarila nimantrana aneka dainyadi karidarila charana. While Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was seriously considering meeting with the Mayavadi sannyasis, the Maharashtrian Brahmin approached him and extended an invitation. The Brahmin submitted his invitation with great humility, and he touched the lotus feet of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Tabe Mahaprabhu tanra nimantrana manila aradina madhyana kari tanra garigela. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu accepted his invitation, and the next day, after finishing his noontime activities, he went to the Brahmana's house. Tahan yaiche kaila prabhu sanyasira nistara pancha tattva khyane taha kariyache vistara. I have already described Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's deliverance of the Mayavadi sannyasis. There we go. In the 7th chapter, when I described the glories of the Pancha Tattva, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Nityananda Prabhu, Advaita Prabhu, Gadadhar Prabhu, and Srivas. Granta bade punarukte hayata katana tahanya na likilun taha kariye likana. Since I have already described this incident very elaborately in the 7th chapter of Adi Lila, I do not wish to increase the size of this book by giving another description. However, I shall try to include in this chapter whatever is not described there. Ye divasa prabhu sanya sere kripa kaila, se divasa haite grame kola hala haila. Beginning from the day on which Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu showed his mercy to the Mayavad sannyasis, there were vivid discussions about this conversion among the inhabitants of Varanasi. Lokera sangata aise prabhure dikite, nana shastre pandita aise shastra vicharite. Crowds of people came to see Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu from that day on, and scholars of various scriptures discussed different subject matters with the Lord. Sarva shastra khande prabhu bhakti kare sara, sayuktika vakye mana piraya sabara. When people came to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to discuss the principles of various scriptures, The Lord defeated their false conclusions and established the predominance of devotional service to the Lord. With logic and argument, He very politely changed their minds. Upadesh lana kare Krishna Sankirtan, sarvaloka hase gaya kare anartan. As soon as people received instructions from Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, they began to chant the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. Thus, everyone laughed, chanted, and danced with the Lord. Prabhure pranata haila sanyasira gana atma madhye goshti kare chare adhyayana. All the Mayavadi sannyasis offered their obeisances unto Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and then began to discuss his movement, giving up their studies of Vedanta and Mayavad philosophy. Prakashanandera shishya eka tanhara samana sabha madhye kahe prabhura kariya samana. One of the disciples of Prakashananda Saraswati, who is as learned as his guru, began to speak in that assembly, offering all respects to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Sri Krishna Chaitanya Haya Shakshat Narayana Vyasa Shutrera Artha Karena Ati Manorama. He said, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Narayan himself. When he explains the Vedanta Sutra, he does so very nicely. Upanishadera Karena Mukyartha Vyakyana Suniya Pandita Lokera Judaya Manakana. When Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu explains the meaning of the Upanishads, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu explains the direct meaning of the Upanishads. When all learned scholars hear this, their minds and ears are satisfied. Sutra Upanishadera Mukyartha Chadiya Acharya Kalpana Kare Agraha Kariya. Giving up the direct meaning of the Vedanta Sutra and the Upanishads, Shankaracharya imagines some other interpretation. Acharya Kalpita Artha Ye Pandita Shune Mukhe Haya Haya Kare Hridaya Namane. All the interpretations of Shankaracharya are imaginary. Such imaginary interpretations are verbally accepted by learned scholars, but they do not appeal to the heart. Sri Krishna Chaitanya Vakya Dridha Satyamani Kali Kale Sanyase Samsara Nahi Jane. The words of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu are firm and convincing, and I accept them as true. In this age of Kali, one cannot be delivered from material clutches simply by formally accepting the renounced order. Hare Nama Slokera Ye Karila Vyakyana Se Satya Shukadartha Parama Pramana. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's explanation of the verse beginning Hare Nam is not only pleasing to the ear, but it is strong factual evidence. And that verse, Hare Nam Eva Kevalam Kalona Steva Gatiranyata. Bhakti Vina Mukti Nahe Bhagavati Kaya Kali Kale Nama Base Sukhe Mukti Haya. In this age of Kali, one cannot attain liberation without taking to the devotional service of the Lord. In this age, even if one does not chant the holy name of Krishna perfectly, he still attains liberation very easily.
Can you repeat it, Prabhu, please? Do you mind?
What? The verse? Oh, the last verse.
This, what you just read now.
Bhakti Vina Mukti Nahe.
The translation actually.
Bhagavati Kaya Kale Kale Nama Base Sukhi Mukti Haya. In this age of Kali, one cannot attain liberation without taking to the devotional service of the Lord. In this age, even if one does not chant the holy name of Krishna perfectly, he still attains liberation very easily. And the verse Harinam Eva Kevalam, Harinam Eva Kevalam, which is not quoted right here. It's quoted in other places. I'm trying to think of its original, where its original source. I think it's a Puranic verse. Not exactly sure. Padma Purana, maybe. Anyway, Shreya Shritim Bhaktim Udasyate Vibho klishyanti ye kevala bodha labdaye tesham aso kleshala eva shishyate nanyad yatastula tushavagatinam. My dear Lord, devotional service unto you is the only auspicious path. If one gives it up simply for speculative knowledge or the understanding that these living beings are spirit, soul, and the material world is false, he undergoes a great deal of trouble. He only gains troublesome and inauspicious activities. His actions are like beating a husk that is already devoid of rice. One's labor becomes fruitless. Ye nye ravindaksha vimukta maninas tavyasta bavad avishuddha buddhaya aruhya krichrena param padam tata patyantyado nadritya yusmad angrayaha. O lotus-eyed one, those who think they are liberated in this life but who are devoid of devotional service to you are of impure intelligence. Although they accept severe austerities and penances and rise to the spiritual position, the impersonal Brahman realization, they fall down again because they neglect to worship your lotus feet. So these verses are describing the supremacy of devotional service, bhakti, connecting with the Supreme via the heart, rather than just a mere rejection of material activity because it's understood to be unable to deliver permanent happiness. So rather than just a rejection of that, in the interest of liberation or moksha, the entry into the positive realm via bhakti, the supremacy of that, is being described here. And who's it being described by? Prakashananda, one of Prakashananda's Saraswati's chief disciples, a fresh convert. Like his deputy, maybe his second in command. It says one of his disciples who is just as knowledgeable as him. So one of his chief disciples is now expressing his realization of bhakti as superior to just Shankaracharya's renunciation and impersonal conception.
By citing verses from the scriptures.
Yeah, these last two verses from the Bhagavatam. Srimad Bhagavatam, 10th canto.
When Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself would talk about the devotional service, would he mainly quote the scriptures?
Yes.
Also?
Yes.
This is how he would also do it?
Yes.
He would never speak with his own words?
No, he would do both.
I don't know much about how he used to express himself.
He would do both. We've just finished reading Sanatan Shiksha, for instance. And if these are the last 5 chapters, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, or 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. Last 5 chapters preceding this one of Madhya Lila. It's all Mahaprabhu talking to Sanatana Goswami,
but
pretty
publicly,
much. One-on-one. There may have been other people listening in. It wasn't a public speech.
When he would talk publicly, he would mainly quote. Is it how he would do it? And privately, he would speak?
No, both. There wasn't any particular way Mahaprabhu had to sort of express himself. But Mahaprabhu is quoting many scriptures. He would always quote Bhagavatam, primarily, Srimad Bhagavatam. Mahaprabhu's and his associates, the faith there is a culture of it's the culture of the Bhagavad Purana, i.e. Srimad Bhagavatam. That's what it is. And so that is considered the primary Praman. But there's other Puranas that are quoted. Other scriptures, I should say, that are quoted. Mainly Puranas, some Upanishads. So Mahaprabhu would do both. It's not that he would just quote scripture or just use his own words and not quote scripture. There's both, of course. That's generally how scriptural discourse is done. there's a quotation of a verse, and then there's an elaboration of the verse in the person's own words. So you'll find that generally it's a mix of both. Mahaprabhu is speaking himself, and he's also backing up, referencing what he says with scriptural verse. Tends to be that way. I mean, go back through and skim over the Sanatana Shiksha, Rupa Shiksha, you'll see what I mean. There's both Mahaprabhu's own words, and there's verses referenced from Shastra. And then you'll find some of that repeated again in, for instance, Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, where the same methodology is used. Rupa Goswami's composing some own his verses, and then they're peppered with references from Bhagavatam and Padma Purana and other places. Jai Jai Sri Chaitanya Jai Nityananda Jai Advaita Chandra Jai Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. So we'll read from Revealed Truth, as we do, one sub-chapter. Srila Bhakti Sundar Govinda Dev Goswami Maharaj. Gurudev is talking about chanting the holy name, and most recently avoiding offences by practicing Trinada Pi Sunichena, the three qualities, Torah Pi Suhishnuna Amani Namanadina Kirtaniya Sadadi. So qualities of humility, tolerance, giving honor, and not desiring the same for oneself. And this subchapter is called Pure Devotion and Divine Mercy. In the first verse of his Shikshastakam, Mahaprabhu explained the relationship between Krishna, his holy name, and the Jiva soul. In his second verse, he explained how powerful Krishna and his holy name are, and also how much of an offender we are. In other words, Mahaprabhu explains how low he is, that he says, Nija Sarvashaktis, Tatrapitani Amita Smarane Nakala, I have no attraction for them, even though your names are invested, are imbued, or contain all your energy, so much energy and potency and beauty, still I have no attraction for them. So Gurudev says how much of an offender we are as in not being able to appreciate such. In his third verse, he gives us the remedy for our offensive condition, which can reveal to us the holy name's power and our relationship with Krishna. Then, in his fourth verse, Mahaprabhu prayed, Na danam na janam na sundarim kavithamba jagadishikamaye. Mama janmani janmanishvare bhavatad bhakti rahoitaki tvaye. O Lord, I do not desire wealth, followers, beautiful woman, liberation. I only pray for unconditional devotional service, unconditional devotion to you, birth after birth. Once someone enters into practicing life by following Mahaprabhu's formula of chanting the Lord's holy name with a mood of humility, tolerance, and giving honor to others, then the only target and desire of their life becomes ahoitaki bhakti, devotion free from material motivations. Ahoitaki means there's no other motivation or purpose behind something. A practitioner does not want any of his energy to be taken by offensive activity, and he desires that his full energy be engaged in service that pleases the Lord. When a practitioner has entered into exclusive devotional life in this way, he can understand Krishna's position and see that his own position in the mundane world is an ugly, impious platform from which to serve the Lord. To express this mood of a practitioner, Mahaprabhu prays in the next verse of his Shikshastakam, Ainanda tanuja kinkaram patitam mam vishame bhavamburo kripayat havapara pankaja stitaduli sadrisham vichintaya. O Lord, I am your eternal servant, but because of my misfortune, I have fallen into this terrible ocean of birth and death. Please, I pray that by your causeless mercy, you will accept me as your own, and I will be connected with you like a particle of dust at your lotus feet. Mahaprabhu's prayer to Krishna means, if you give me your merciful glance, I and everything I possess will become purified and useful for your service. Stitaduli sadrisham vichintaya. My existence will enter into the transcendental service world, and I will be able to serve you purely there for your satisfaction. If the Lord will give a little bit of his attention to a devotee, then the devotee will become completely purified. As the sparkling light of a match can remove 100 years of darkness from a closed room, so everything can be cleaned and cleared from everyone's heart, from anyone's heart, by the Lord's divine influence. Jai Srila Bhakti Sundar Govinda Deva Goswami Maharaj Gurudeva Ki Jai.
That's a good analogy, isn't it? A striking match can
Yeah.
destroy hundreds of years of darkness.
Yes.
That's a really good one. I've never heard that.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. I remember reading that before and thinking exactly the same. Particularly the 100 years of darkness.
Yeah. I felt the same. I saw the same
Can you
thing.
repeat that one? Can you repeat that one?
The Gurudev is saying, just as, says, if the Lord will give even a little bit of his attention to a devotee, then the devotee will be completely purified. As the sparkling light of a match can remove 100 years of darkness from a closed room, so everything can be cleaned and cleared from anyone's heart by the Lord's divine influence. So even timeless, a build-up of contamination, coverings, conditioning, build-up of material conditioning for generations, no, for thousands of generations can be removed with the light of Krishna's touch, contact with Krishna.
Hare Haraya Nama Krishna Jadavaya Nama
Hare Haraya Nama Krishna Yadavaya Namaha Yadavaya Madhavaya Keshavaya Namaha Gopala Govinda Ram Shri Madhusudan Giridhari Gopinath Madanamahan Shri Chaitanya Nityananda Shri Advaita Sadhu Sundar Radha Giridhar Jyoti Jai Vishnu Bhakti Bhakti Sundar Govinda Dev Goswami Maharaj Gurudev Jai Jai Vishnu Bhakti Bhakti Rakshak Sri Dhade Goswami Maharaj Jai Jai Vishnu Bhagavan Bhakti Saranda Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada Ki Jai Shri Rupananda Guru Varga Ki Jai Namacharya Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Jai Shri Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai Jai Vaishnava Manavara Namaste Bhakti Vrinda Ki Jai Shri Chaitanya Saraswati Mat Ki Jai Shri Chaitanya Saraswati Mat West London Ki Jai Shri Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jai Nitai Go Premanandi Hari 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 Go
Harapan Prabhu Ki Jai.
Everyone has
All the devotees worldwide, Ki Jai.